The annual Miller Family Business Summit was being held at my brother's mansion, where old money met new arrogance. The gathering was less about business strategy and more about showcasing who had the biggest yacht or the newest private jet. I straightened my understated Armani blazer as I walked through the service entrance, where they told me to park my cheap car. "Oh, Sophie's here," my sister-in-law Catherine announced with fake enthusiasm. "Darling, the catering staff is setting up in the kitchen. Perhaps you could supervise." The irony wasn't lost on me. While they thought I was struggling with my little investment firm, I had spent the last 3 years systematically acquiring shares of Miller Industries through various shell companies. Today the final piece would fall into place. "James is about to present the quarterly numbers," my father announced, not even bothering to look in my direction. Family members only in the main conference room. My brother James, CEO of Miller Industries, through the impressive qualification of being firstborn, adjusted his Rolex with a smirk. "Sophie, why don't you make yourself useful and check if the coffee service is ready?" If they only knew that while they were planning this meeting, I was orchestrating the largest hostile takeover in the company's history, that their precious family business was about to have a new owner. Me. "Of course," I said quietly, pulling out my phone to check the time. 10:47 a.m. In exactly 13 minutes, my team of lawyers would be filing the final paperwork. The kitchen staff buzzed around me, setting up elaborate refreshments for the real family members. Through the open door, I could hear James starting his presentation. "Miller Industries has never been stronger," he boasted, his voice carrying that particular tone of unearned confidence. "Our profit margins are at an all-time high." I bit back a laugh, knowing the real numbers. Under James's leadership, the company had been hemorrhaging money. Creative accounting had hidden the truth from shareholders, but not from my team of forensic accountants. "Sophie dear," my mother called from the doorway, "since you're in here, could you make sure they're using the good china? We can't have anything less than perfect for the board members." The board members who, unbeknownst to my family, had already secretly approved my takeover bid. Funny how quickly loyalty shifts when you show people the actual books. My phone vibrated. A message from my chief counsel. "Final share purchase executing in 10 minutes. Current ownership, 49.7%. After execution, 51.3%. Control secured." "Sorry, Mom. I need to take this call," I said, stepping into the garden. "It's about my investment work." "Oh yes, your little hobby," she waved dismissively. "Do you try to keep it down?" James is discussing important matters. Important matters like the 3 failed acquisitions he'd hidden from the board, or perhaps the offshore accounts my investigators had uncovered. Through the window, I saw James gesturing at charts carefully crafted to hide the company's true financial state. The family members nodded along, none understanding enough about business to question his figures. And now James announced, "I'd like to discuss our expansion plans. We're considering acquiring several smaller firms." My phone buzzed again, this time my assistant, right on schedule. I put it on speaker loud enough for them to hear through the open window. "Miss Miller, the papers are ready. You now own 51.3% of Miller Industries. The board has accepted your terms. Shall I proceed with the announcement?" The presentation inside stopped abruptly. James froze mid-gesture, his face turning an interesting shade of white. "Perfect timing," I said, walking back into the conference room. "I believe this would be a good time to discuss those expansion plans, wouldn't you, James?" The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. James recovered first, his practiced smile barely masking his confusion. "Sophie, we're in the middle of something important here. Perhaps you could take your personal calls outside." "Actually," I said, taking a seat at the main table, the one I'd been specifically told to avoid, "this call is directly relevant to our family business discussion." Catherine tittered nervously. "Sophie dear, you really should wait in the kitchen. These matters are quite complex." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert that made James's face go even paler. "Breaking, Miller Industries ownership shift. Major stakeholder takes control." "Complex matters," I mused, sliding my phone across the polished mahogany table. Like how the company lost $240 million on the Asian expansion that James never reported to the board. Or the interesting discrepancies in the European subsidiaries' books. Father slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough, Sophie. You have no idea what you're talking about. James has led this company brilliantly. See, I pulled out my tablet, projecting a series of graphs onto the conference room wall, because these numbers told a different story. 3 failed acquisitions, hidden losses. I paused for effect. Some very creative accounting that the SEC might find interesting. Where did you get those figures? James demanded, his CEO facade cracking. From my team of forensic accountants. The same team that's been building my case for the past 3 years while you all thought I was just playing at being an investor. My mother's diamond bracelet clinked nervously against her water glass. Your case? What case? Another message flashed across my phone. Stock trading halted pending major ownership announcement. The case that convinced the board to support my takeover bid, I said calmly. Though to be fair, your management style did most of the convincing for me. James laughed, but it sounded hollow. Takeover? You can't afford to buy out a coffee shop, let alone Miller Industries. I smiled, remembering all the times they'd mocked my small investment firm, never bothering to check what I was actually building. Actually, brother dear, I already have those shell companies buying up shares over the past 3 years. I paused. Oh, mine. The offshore investment groups that kept increasing their stakes. Also mine. The color drained from James's face as realization dawned. That's impossible. We would have known, would you? I challenged. The same way you knew about the $180 million loss in the Mexican venture, or the class action lawsuit that's about to hit. Catherine stood up, her perfect socialite mask slipping. James, what is she talking about? Nothing, he snapped. She's making this up. Sophie's just jealous because father chose me to run the company. Father chose you? I echoed. I agreed. But the shareholders chose me. As of 3 minutes ago, I own 51.3% of Miller Industries. The board has already approved the leadership change. My phone rang again, the board chairman. I put it on speaker. Ms. Miller, the paperwork is complete. Would you like us to issue the press release now? James lunged for the phone, but I calmly moved it away. Yes, please proceed. And could you send security to the main conference room? I believe we'll need assistance with the transition. The sound of running footsteps echoed from the hallway. Probably James's assistant rushing in with the news he should have seen coming years ago. Oh, and James, I added, standing up, you might want to clear your office by the end of the day. The SEC's forensic team will need the space tomorrow morning. This is ridiculous, James sputtered, yanking at his tie. Father, do something. Our father, the great William Miller, founder of Miller Industries, sat stunned in his leather chair. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. The board can't do this, he finally managed. This is a family company, I corrected, pulling up more documents on the conference room screen. It's a publicly traded company. And as of 9 minutes ago, I am the majority shareholder. Would you like me to continue, or do you want it formatted further? There were the shares James practically gave away during his restructuring last year. Remember those strategic investors you were so proud of bringing in? All my shell companies. James's face went from white to red. Those deals were confidential. Then you should have read the fine print. Or at least noticed that all the holding companies had variations of my dog's name. Catherine let out a small gasp. Maxwell, your golden retriever. Max Invest Holdings, Max Global Capital, Maxwell Enterprises. I smiled. I always did tell you Max was a smart boy. My phone buzzed continuously. News alerts, messages from board members, and increasingly panicked texts from family members not present at the meeting. Cousin Elizabeth, OMG, what's happening to our stock? Uncle George, someone explain why trading is halted. Aunt Margaret, Sophie, are you really buying the company? James's assistant burst into the room, clutching his tablet. Sir, the news, it's everywhere. On the screen behind me, CNBC was breaking the story. Miller Industries undergoes surprise leadership change. Sophie Miller takes control in calculated takeover. Want to see something interesting? I asked, switching to another document. Here's the real state of the company under James's leadership. Charts and graphs filled the screen, revealing the true financial picture. Declining profits masked by creative accounting, failed ventures hidden in subsidiary reports, millions in unexplained expenses. That's confidential information, James shouted, finally losing his carefully maintained CEO composure. Not anymore. The SEC will have all of this by noon. Though I'm particularly interested in explaining these, I continued, pulling up a series of transfers. $3 million to a shell company in the Caymans, 50,000 monthly payments to a consulting firm that doesn't exist. Mother's hand flew to her pearls. James, what is she talking about? Now I continued, pulling out a stack of folders. Let's discuss the transition. Security is outside, and HR has prepared severance packages for the current executive team. They're quite generous considering the circumstances. You can't fire me. James stood up, attempting to tower over me. I built this company. No, Father built this company. You nearly destroyed it. I gestured to the shareholder value chart. Would you like to see how dramatic the decline has been? Especially since the day you took over. My phone rang again. Ma'am, the press is gathering in the lobby. Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, requesting immediate interviews. Also, SEC representatives have arrived early. Perfect, I replied. Please show the SEC team to James's office. They can begin their audit immediately. This is a mistake, Father finally spoke again, his voice quieter now. Sophie, you don't understand what it takes to run a company of this size. I pulled up one final document on the screen, my portfolio's performance over the last 5 years. The room fell silent as they saw the numbers. Actually, Father, I do, I said. While you were all mocking my little investment firm, I was building a corporate empire that's now worth 3 times what Miller Industries is. Would you like to see my Harvard Business Review cover article? I added. It came out last month. Though I wouldn't be surprised if you missed it. You were all too busy planning this meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. The doors opened as security and board members filed in. The board chairman, Mr. Harrison, who had secretly supported my takeover bid, nodded respectfully in my direction. Ms. Miller, he announced formally, the board has unanimously approved your appointment as CEO, effective immediately. James collapsed into his chair, his perfect world crumbling. Father, you're the chairman emeritus. Stop this. Father looked at the financial records still displayed on the screen, then at the board members. The truth was finally sinking in. You all knew about this, I said. We've been watching Sophie's progress for years. Mr. Harrison explained. While James was hiding losses, she was building a reputation in the financial world under her professional name. Catherine's manicured hand clutched her designer bag. What professional name? I smiled. Sarah Maxwell. The same Sarah Maxwell who was named Financial Times CEO of the Year last month. The one James actually quoted earlier about innovative business strategies. The irony of James unknowingly praising my business acumen in his last presentation wasn't lost on anyone in the room. That's impossible, Mother whispered. Sophie, Sarah Maxwell, she's the youngest woman to build a $1 trillion investment empire, I finished for her. The one who turned around failing companies like Preston Global and Tech Fusion. Yes, that's me. Though you'd know that if any of you had bothered to check what I was actually doing instead of assuming I was just playing at business. My phone buzzed again. More family messages pouring in. Cousin Robert, is it true? You're Sarah Maxwell. Aunt Elizabeth. The Sarah Maxwell who bought out Richardson Corp? Uncle George, why didn't you tell us? Because I said aloud, answering their texts verbally, none of you ever asked. You were too busy sending me to the kitchen during business meetings. Security approached James. Sir, we need you to step away from your computer. SEC protocols require immediate securing of all executive devices. This is our company, James protested weakly. Our family's legacy. And I'm family, I reminded him. The family member you all dismissed. The one you said would never understand real business. Speaking of real business, I turned to Mr. Harrison. Shall we begin the emergency shareholder meeting? The next hour was a blur of activity. CC investigators started their audit. Security escorted James and his executive team out, and the board convened to approve immediate changes. Through it all, my family sat in stunned silence, watching their carefully constructed hierarchy collapse. Before we conclude, I addressed the room. Let's be clear about what happens next. The company stays in the family, just under different management. Proper management and us. Mother asked quietly, what happens to us? You'll retain your shares minus voting rights until the SEC investigation concludes. Your dividends will continue, though they might be smaller once we start reporting real numbers instead of James's creative accounting. James, being escorted out, turned back one last time. The kitchen, he said bitterly. We sent you to the kitchen, I replied, sitting in his former chair. And while you were all congratulating yourselves in the conference room, I built an empire that could buy your company 3 times over. Funny how life works out, isn't it? My assistant entered with a stack of papers. Ms. Miller, your first press conference as CEO is in 20 minutes. The Wall Street Journal is running with the headline, Kitchen to Boardroom, The Secret Rise of Sophie Miller. Perfect, I said, standing. Oh, and James, don't forget to turn in your company car keys. I hear the kitchen staff needs a new delivery vehicle. The security team finished escorting my family out. Through the window, I watched their luxury cars pull away from the mansion that would soon be listed as a company asset. My phone rang one last time, the Forbes editor I'd been working with. Ready for the cover shoot? She asked. We're thinking of going with the hidden billionaire. How Sophie Miller built an empire while her family wasn't looking. I looked around the conference room where I'd been banned for so many years. Now it was mine, along with everything else. Actually, I replied, let's do the shoot in the kitchen. It's where they always said I belonged. A message flashed on my phone. Miller Industries stock to resume trading under new leadership. Analysts predict a 40% jump at the opening. I smiled, remembering all the family meetings I'd spent in the kitchen, listening through the door while they discussed important business matters. Turns out the kitchen had the best seat in the house. They just didn't know it. One more thing, I told my assistant. Send a memo to all employees. First order of business under new management. The kitchen staff gets a raise. Because after all, I smiled, some of the best business lessons happen in the kitchen.